Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
So Barry Morphew has the full weight of the authorities and the law coming against him. And if he has any kind of sense at all, and he loves his girls at all, I hope he'll do the right thing.
On Mother's Day, May 10th, 2020, a quiet Colorado mountain town became the center of a mystery that investigators would spend years trying to untangle. That afternoon, a concerned neighbor reported that 49-year-old Suzanne Morphew had vanished. Her daughters had been trying to reach her all day to wish her a happy Mother's Day, but every call and text went unanswered. Her husband, Barry Morphew, was out of town for work, and Suzanne's mountain bike was nowhere to be found. She loved cycling and often explored the trails near her home, but disappearing without contacting anyone, especially on Mother's Day, was completely out of character. Search teams rushed into the rugged terrain surrounding the Morphew property. Before long, deputies located Suzanne's bicycle abandoned on a remote stretch of road. There were no obvious signs of a crash, no indication of where she had gone, and no trace of the woman everyone was desperately searching for. What began as a missing person case would eventually raise a far more disturbing question. Was Suzanne simply missing, or had someone ensured she would never return home? To understand why her disappearance shocked so many people, investigators first had to understand who Suzanne Morphew was. Born Suzanne Renee Mormon on April 30th, 1971, in Alexandria, Indiana, she grew up in a close-knit family and was the fourth of Jean and Adrienne Mormon's 6 children. After her parents divorced when she was 9, Suzanne focused on school and later attended Purdue University, earning a degree in elementary education in 1994. That same year, on August 5, she married Barry Morphew, a fellow Alexandria native she had known since high school, and together they appeared to build the kind of life many people admired. Suzanne taught middle school before choosing to stay home and raise their 2 daughters, Mallory, born in 1999, and Macy, born in 2003. Friends consistently described her as a devoted mother whose family always came first. In 2018, the Morphews left Indiana for a home outside Salida, Colorado, hoping to begin a new chapter closer to Mallory, who was attending college nearby. The scenery was spectacular: towering mountains, winding trails, and wildlife roaming through their property, but beneath that peaceful setting, the marriage was quietly deteriorating. To outsiders, they still looked like a successful family embracing a fresh start. Behind closed doors, however, the relationship had been under strain for much longer than most people realized. By the early hours of Mother's Day 2020, Barry had already left the house, later telling investigators he was driving roughly 150 miles north to a landscaping job in Broomfield. Court records would later show activity from both his phone and vehicle beginning around 3:30 that morning. With both daughters away on a church camping trip, Suzanne spent the day alone at the family home. Hours later, after repeated attempts to contact their mother failed, the girls became worried enough to ask a neighbor to check on her. Barry instructed the neighbor to look for Suzanne and her bicycle, and when neither could be found, he said to call the sheriff. He immediately began the drive back toward Salida. As deputies secured the scene and expanded the search, almost nothing made sense. The abandoned bicycle answered none of the investigators' biggest questions, and every passing hour deepened the mystery. At first glance, it looked like a missing person investigation. Before long, detectives would begin uncovering evidence suggesting that Suzanne's disappearance might have been something far darker, and that the truth about her marriage was only beginning to emerge. As investigators worked to reconstruct Suzanne Morphew's final known movements, one question quickly became impossible to ignore. If this had been a simple biking accident, where was the evidence? Her mountain bike had been discovered down a steep embankment near Chaffee County Road 225, yet the scene revealed almost nothing about what had happened. Barry Morphew returned home at approximately 8:40 that evening and was reportedly emotional when he arrived. By Sunday night, both of their daughters, Mallory and Macy, were back home, but Suzanne was still missing. To experienced investigators, the abandoned bicycle raised more questions than answers. In Colorado's rugged terrain, a genuine accident would normally leave behind physical evidence damage, blood, disturbed vegetation, or some indication of what had taken place. Detectives weren't finding any of it. Sheriff John Spetsy quickly established a dedicated tip line, and within days the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI had joined the search. Authorities asked nearby residents to preserve surveillance footage from the days leading up to Mother's Day as tips poured in from across the region. Suzanne's family offered a $200,000 reward for information, while her brother organized additional volunteer searches. Despite the growing effort, investigators found no trace of Suzanne and no evidence explaining where she had gone. Barry maintained that there had been no serious problems at home. According to him, the evening before Suzanne disappeared had been completely normal. He said they had spent time together, been intimate, and that Suzanne was asleep when he left early that morning for work. He described their marriage as happy and insisted Suzanne was a loving wife and devoted mother. A few days later, he released an emotional public appeal.
Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you.
To the public, Barry appeared to be a desperate husband pleading for his wife's safe return. But behind the scenes, investigators were uncovering a very different story. As they examined Suzanne's phone and recovered messages exchanged with close friends, they found repeated references to a marriage in crisis. Months before she disappeared, Suzanne wrote, "I feel no peace when he's here." In another message, she admitted, "I would not feel safe alone with him." Earlier that spring, she confided that Barry refused to discuss divorce. Then, on May 6, just 4 days before she vanished, she sent him a text investigators later recovered from his phone after it had been deleted. "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to, and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." For investigators, those messages raised a critical possibility. Suzanne hadn't simply been unhappy. Just 4 days before she disappeared, she appeared ready to leave the marriage altogether. Investigators then turned their attention to Barry's own movements on Mother's Day, and several details immediately stood out. Court records indicated the Broomfield work trip had been arranged at the last minute, yet he reportedly arrived with tools that were not suitable for the job. Digital evidence showed his phone became active well before the departure time he initially gave investigators. Surveillance footage also documented several trash disposals during his drive north. At his hotel, cameras captured Barry entering with shovels before emerging less than 20 minutes later wearing different clothes and carrying a container whose contents could not be identified. Investigators also noted that Barry made no recorded attempt to call Suzanne throughout the day she was reported missing, even though it was Mother's Day. Individually, none of those observations proved a crime had occurred, but taken together, they formed a timeline investigators believed warranted much closer scrutiny. And as they continued examining Suzanne's digital life, they uncovered another closely guarded secret one investigators would later believe changed not only the motive, but the entire direction of the case. Barry had been telling friends and even his daughters that Suzanne had been emotionally unstable before she disappeared. Yet the private messages she shared with those closest to her told a different story, not of a woman falling apart, but of someone carefully planning a new future. Then, on May 20th, 2020, just 10 days after Suzanne was reported missing, detectives searching the Morphew home discovered what appeared to be an ordinary pen inside the master bedroom closet. What looked like an ordinary pen turned out to be something far more significant. Hidden inside was a covert recording device Suzanne had secretly placed in the room. Suzanne had secretly purchased the recorder because she suspected Barry was having an affair. She even told one of her friends she intended to use it to catch him. Instead, the device captured something she never expected: her own private conversations with another man. It took FBI investigators nearly 6 months to identify him. His name was Jeff Liebler, someone both Suzanne and Barry had known since high school in Alexandria, Indiana. Suzanne and Jeff had briefly dated decades earlier before life took them in different directions. After moving to Colorado in 2018, and feeling increasingly isolated as her marriage deteriorated, Suzanne reached out to him through Facebook with a simple message: "Howdy, stranger. Their conversations gradually developed into a romantic relationship. Investigators learned Jeff was married and living in Michigan with his wife and 6 children. After Suzanne disappeared, he did not immediately come forward and had taken steps to keep the relationship hidden. Once agents identified him, they conducted extensive interviews and determined he was not a suspect. Although the affair revealed Suzanne had been planning a life beyond her marriage, it failed to explain what had happened to her on Mother's Day. Instead, investigators were left with an even more troubling question. If Suzanne had finally decided to leave Barry, had someone discovered those plans before she disappeared? Unknown male DNA was recovered from the glove compartment of Suzanne's Range Rover. Laboratory testing later indicated the profile partially matched a man linked to 3 unsolved sexual assault investigations in Arizona and Illinois. Barry's DNA did not match the sample. For a time, detectives had to consider whether Suzanne's disappearance might involve an unknown predator rather than someone close to her. Investigators thoroughly pursued the lead, but it never produced evidence connecting anyone else to Suzanne's disappearance. While that theory gradually lost momentum, another line of evidence continued, pointing investigators back toward the Morphew home. During their search of the property, investigators found something they hadn't expected: a tranquilizer dart cap inside the Morphew property. Barry acknowledged owning tranquilizer equipment that he used to capture deer on his property. The drug mixture he used, known as BAM, a combination of butorphanol, azaparone, and medetomidine, was tightly regulated and unavailable to the general public. Prescription records showed that when Suzanne disappeared, Barry was the only known private citizen in that part of Colorado authorized to possess it. When investigators questioned him about the dart cap, Barry explained he had recently fired a tranquilizer dart after spotting deer in the yard because he wanted to collect their antlers. Detectives documented the explanation, but continued examining the evidence. Nearly a year after Suzanne vanished, investigators believed they had assembled enough pieces to move the case forward. Working together, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI completed a detailed 130-page arrest affidavit. After months of following digital evidence, forensic findings, interviews, and timelines, the evidence had finally reached the point where investigators believed they could accuse someone of murder. On May 5, 2021, Barry Morphew was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, tampering with physical evidence, and attempting to influence a public servant. From the beginning, Barry maintained he was innocent and pleaded not guilty to every charge. The prosecution's case was unusual because Suzanne had not been found. There was no body, no confirmed crime scene, and no eyewitness. Instead, investigators relied on digital evidence, witness testimony, timeline analysis, forensic findings surrounding the tranquilizer evidence, and Barry's own actions before and after Suzanne vanished. Following 4 days of preliminary hearings and nearly 20 hours of testimony, Judge Patrick Murphy ruled there was enough evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Barry was later released on bond, flanked by his 2 daughters as he left the courtroom. Just when it appeared the investigation was finally moving toward trial, the case took an unexpected turn. In December 2021, Joseph Cahill, one of the lead investigators with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, resigned while under an internal affairs investigation. Court filings later revealed that Cahill had expressed concerns to other law enforcement officials that Barry's arrest had come too soon, and that additional forensic testing should have been completed first. Around the same time, senior officials within the CBI reportedly shared similar concerns. Importantly, those disagreements were not presented as evidence that Barry was innocent. Instead, they reflected internal debate over whether prosecutors had moved forward before the investigation was fully complete. Barry's defense team quickly seized on those developments, filing a motion to dismiss in early 2022. Soon afterward, Judge Patrick Murphy recused himself because of a potential conflict of interest, and the trial was transferred from Chaffee County to neighboring Fremont County after concerns that extensive local publicity would make it difficult to select an impartial jury. Then, only days before trial was scheduled to begin, District Attorney Linda Stanley dismissed the charges without prejudice on April 19, 2022. That decision allowed prosecutors to refile the case in the future if additional evidence emerged. For the moment, the murder case had effectively collapsed, and Barry walked out of court a free man. His attorney argued there was no physical evidence directly linking him to Suzanne's death, while prosecutors insisted the investigation remained active despite the dismissal. With the charges dismissed, Barry went on the offensive. In 2023, he filed a federal lawsuit seeking $15 million, accusing state and federal investigators of malicious prosecution and claiming they knowingly pursued charges without sufficient evidence. Publicly, it appeared the case had stalled. The prosecution had collapsed, the charges were gone, and many wondered whether Suzanne's disappearance would ever be solved. Yet behind the scenes, investigators never stopped working. They continued reviewing evidence, following leads, and searching for answers, believing the case was far from over. Then, more than 3 years after Suzanne vanished, everything changed. On September 22nd, 2023, Colorado Bureau of Investigation agents were searching an area near Moffat in Saguache County while following up on an unrelated missing person investigation. During that search, they discovered human remains buried in a remote location roughly 2 hours southwest of Colorado Springs. Investigators would later conclude the body had likely been moved at least twice before finally being concealed there. Days later, on September 27th, forensic testing confirmed what Suzanne's family had feared for years. The remains belonged to Suzanne Morphew. For investigators, everything they had spent more than 3 years trying to prove could finally be tested against physical evidence. After years of legal setbacks, conflicting opinions, and unanswered questions, detectives finally had the one piece of evidence they had been searching for since Mother's Day 2020. And what the autopsy would eventually reveal would become one of the most significant developments in the entire investigation. On September 27, 2023, the coroner confirmed that the remains discovered in Saguache County belonged to Suzanne Renee Morphew. Her family finally had the answers they had spent years searching for. In a public statement, they remembered Suzanne for her gentle spirit and warm smile, adding that although fate may have played a role in finding her, it never diminished the determination of the investigators, volunteers, and loved ones who refused to stop looking. 7 months later, in April 2024, the investigation took another major turn. Suzanne's death was officially ruled a homicide. The autopsy detected butorphanol, azapirone, and medetomidine in her remains, the 3 drugs that make up BAM. The specialized tranquilizer Barry Morphew was licensed to possess and had long used while managing deer on his properties. For prosecutors, it was a crucial development. Investigators also pointed to forensic evidence they believed connected those same chemicals to Barry's equipment, reinforcing a theory they had been building since the earliest stages of the investigation. The next chapter unfolded in June 2025. On June 18, a grand jury returned a new indictment charging Barry Morphew with first-degree murder. Investigators already knew where to find him. 2 days later, they stopped him during a traffic stop in Phoenix, Arizona, where he had reportedly been living with a woman under the name Lee Moore. He was returned to Colorado, pleaded not guilty, and his daughters helped secure a modified $3 million bond. Barry was released under strict house arrest with GPs monitoring while awaiting trial. The case was initially scheduled for October 2026, but defense attorneys argued they needed substantially more time to review the enormous volume of discovery material collected over years of investigation. Judge Jane Hopkins agreed, moving the trial to July 19, 2027. Prosecutors have indicated they intend to present evidence of the couple's deteriorating marriage, alleged domestic abuse, and Suzanne's plans to pursue a divorce. Barry's attorney, David Beller, continues to deny the allegations, disputes the prosecution's interpretation of the evidence, and argues investigators overlooked alternative suspects. One detail from Barry's arrest has continued to draw attention. According to investigators, he had been living under a different name while telling people around him that his wife had simply been abducted. Prosecutors have argued this reflected an effort to maintain a carefully constructed version of events long after Suzanne disappeared. His defense, however, rejects any suggestion that using an alias proves guilt. That question, like many others in this case, will ultimately be decided in court. Few investigations survived the level of turmoil this one endured. Over 5 years, it weathered internal disagreements among investigators, the resignation of a lead CBI agent, dismissed charges, a $15 million lawsuit against law enforcement, the discovery of Suzanne's remains, and a second murder indictment. Through every setback, however, the investigation remained active. Sheriff John Spezzi repeatedly emphasized the same message throughout the years. They had never stopped pursuing answers in Suzanne's case. As of today, Suzanne Morphew has not yet been laid to rest because her remains are still being held as evidence while the criminal case moves forward. Her trial is currently scheduled for July 19, 2027. Whatever the final verdict may be, one truth has already changed forever. Suzanne was found. She was brought home. And after years of unanswered questions, the search for justice has moved from the mountains of Colorado into a courtroom where the final chapter of her story has yet to be written. If you found this documentary meaningful, consider sharing it with someone who appreciates carefully researched true crime stories. Your support helps bring more cases like this to light. Also, you can watch our previous documentaries. The playlist is on the screen now. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and we'll meet with the next one. Thanks for watching, and we'll meet again. Until then, goodbye.